Demography is interesting because there's three basic processes that shape populations: birth, death, and migration. And in this case, we study mortality, and that is death rates, because it shapes populations. With people living longer, that you have more older people in populations. This maps into questions about Social Security and entitlements, medical care, and these sorts of things that are fundamental questions that societies really have to address, not only now but certainly into the future. As far as we can see into the future, it's an aging world. It's the first time in the history of humans, any society, where the elderly will outnumber the youth. It's the first time ever. And so that this is new territory for all societies around the world, even developing countries, that they have to address different kinds of questions that historically have never been encountered before. At some point, the world population actually can increase no more. And it's been estimated, say, 10 billion people. But that there's a lot of conditionals there, depends on resources available and so forth. But there's a question called Methuselah's choice at that point. And that is that when you can no longer increase, then you have a choice between giving births once every 50 or 60 years or a long life, but you can't have both, because you're dealing with what's called person years out there, and whether you have 100,000 people or 1,000,000 people that live 50 years, or twice as many people or half as many people that live 100 years. In both cases, you have the same number of person years living, so that you have these kind of trade-offs at some point out there in the not too distant future. There's two ways to look at lifespan. One, you have the record age. So just like you'd have a record fish size or record deer or something like this, of course you have the largest ever or the longest lived ever, and that's the empirical aspect of lifespan. Then the other way to look at this is that you have a theoretical lifespan, of which that's the age to which no one can live beyond. And that theoretical concept simply is not valid. You'll never find an age that you can point to for any species and say that that's the age we've discovered that no one or no individual can live beyond. So that with this concept of humans, it's indeterminate, in the sense that we're not ever going to be immortal, that is, live to infinity, whatever that is. But on the other hand, we'll never discover the age to which people can live to and nobody can live beyond, because that age doesn't exist. You always have improvements in medical improvements. You have organ replacement now is emerging, immune system therapies and so forth. Is that I envision that there's always going to be some improvement over the years in human longevity. Even the concept of lifespan, when you really, on one hand, it seems like a straightforward concept, in that it's how long some individuals can live. But on the other hand, there's other concepts here. What if people could hibernate, for example? Then this would be a dormant period where they could spend their at middle age, decide to go into dormancy or hibernation, and then reemerge 50 years later. So that's lifespan. That's a different concept for lifespan. You can also define lifespan as in from conception to the current age. Now, starting at conception, then you go through an embryonic stage. You can put this into liquid nitrogen, for example, and therefore you have virtually almost immortal individual if you view the embryonic stage as the beginning of life. And so that, again, even though lifespan on one hand seems fairly straightforward as a concept, on the other hand, when you get into these concepts of dormancy and freezing and liquid nitrogen and so forth, is that all that begins to become less straightforward. In fact, that's why we study lifespan in non-human species. It's not just to be able to experiment with these and ask questions about upper limits to lifespan or how dietary restriction affects longevity, but in fact, all organisms, all living organisms, is that there's different life history concepts, some of which involve dormancy, and that we can learn and be informed from studying non-human species on different concepts for extending human lives as well. There was a breakthrough on how to uh, uh, put humans into a quiescent state or a dormant state, that this would be a new concept for in the future, where you could become dormant for decades or more and then become active again at some later point in time. So I see that as a concept that may emerge in the future. As you live longer, you could have a second family, a second marriage, and so forth, second careers. Or another way to look at this would be another model here, not just a repetitive model, but it would be this proportional model. That is that your marriage and your career is now just simply extended by a number of years. Your marriage obviously is extended and so forth. So that this changes how society, this changes the nature of society when you reconfigure and reorganize individual life courses, because you have a sequence of events from education and marriage and family and career and retirement and so forth, is that you can change the sequence of these, you can change the onset of some of these. For example, that you could have what's emerging now is what they call Odyssey years, so that we, at least in the US, we talk about the age 30 is the new 21, and that is where young adults have this opportunity to explore through their 20s and then marry and get a job and so forth in their 30s. But the same thing applies to a middle age and even older ages, where you're changing the timing of these events to later ages, or because you have a very long life, that you can do things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do simply because you have this new concept of a very long life course. There's one country in the world right now where life expectancy is decreasing, at least for males, and that is Russia. But all the other countries, it's increasing incrementally. So that clearly out there, this rate of increase is not going to be sustained. I mean, for one thing, is that the early gains in life expectancy were due to reduced mortality at the younger and middle ages due to acute diseases primarily. But now we're getting into the ages where it's much, much more difficult, because these are having to reduce mortality at the older ages. That's the only place where mortality is really still substantial. Yet you have the dementia, you have the Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases, these sorts of things that are very difficult and challenging. So that this is certainly a challenge into the future. At least for the next until mid-century or so, all we can go by, if we just extrapolate, would be roughly 3 months a year 3 months a year for the foreseeable future. Now, that's there's the possibility, obviously, of medical breakthroughs and breakthroughs in organ regeneration and immune system therapy and so forth, where this could be a complete game changer, where there's possibilities for large gains in life expectancy. But the information we have right now, we can just pretty much extrapolate and incrementally every 4 to 5 years gain a year in life expectancy. That's where things are headed. On the other hand, with the studies that we've done and others have done now with non-human species, fruit flies, mice, worms, and so forth, is that it's clear that there's not a specific age to which we're going to reach and nobody can live beyond, so that, at least in theory anyway, is that there's not a limit to human life, a specific limit. Again, that doesn't mean that we're going to live, be immortal and to live to infinity and so forth, but on the other hand, it's still open-ended. Humans are long-lived, not for the reason as in tortoises and some of these that are long-lived. They selected long life for a different reason, and that would be that because they're social species. We're among the most advanced social species outside of eusocial insects and so forth. We could have a lifespan of much shorter, but and that is 30 or 40 years, and we could still, I view it much like livestock, you could still you know, sort of rear humans and replace them, because of course our reproductive ages are much younger than that. But what would be missing is humanity, and that is what humans distinguished from shorter lived species is that the elderly are the culture bearers, and so that they are the libraries of the past. They transmit the cultural information from generation to generation, so that that's the important part of the elderly in humans. Now, you have 70 to 90 years as an evolved lifespan, and I believe, and there's evidence for this, that some of the prehistoric peoples lived to these ages. So what about the years of from 90 to 120 or so? I call these the post-Darwinian segment of the human lifespan, and that is we're over-engineered for the current environment, and therefore it's because it's much more benign environment now, is that this is sort of a bonus we have because it's less harsh conditions when we're younger, and so now you get into this segment of that's well beyond the evolved lifespan of 20, 30 years, and you look into the future and it may be well beyond that, living to well beyond 120, maybe 130 and beyond. I mean, there's always going to be issues. Desirable at the societal level, there's always going to be problems, but at the individual level, why not? If you have your health, is that you can enjoy life, and an interesting study I've done with my students is that I ask a question early in the course, what would be the optimal age of death? That is the life course. And I did the same study, by the way, with a retirement center here. And interestingly, the ages were not much different between the elderly and the youth here at University of California. And it was about 85 to 90, and so that they view living 85 to 90 years as the optimal, that's enough. But in fact, if you have your health, why not live 100, 120, as many years as you have, as long as you have your health? Who wants to live, you know, debilitated and in, you know, unhealthy state and so forth, of course. But on the other hand, if you have your health, it would be certainly at the individual level to who wouldn't want to live long and enjoy life as long as possible. There's no secret to longevity. These, it's as though you're going to find the map, you know, the secret to the treasure in the map in the attic or something. It simply doesn't exist. That is a single secret, even a set of secrets. It's a matter of, you know, quantity of life flows from quality of life. And so that you live well, and so that there's healthy tips, and then there's healthy living, but also there's a bigger concept on what I mean, a successful aging, but it has to do with nobility of purpose. and that is that it's not just enough to eat right and exercise and these sorts of things, but rather there's this bigger concept of nobility of purpose and character and integrity and so forth that really maps into living a long life. It's not a secret per se, but it has to do with the broader life history concept, a lifestyle concept, and successful aging, that all these come together into a quality of life, and from that quality of life flows quantity.
What do you mean by nobility of?
That is that you have a purpose higher than simply your own, is that this extends to, if you're in a relationship, certainly to a partner, to your family, to your community, to society more broadly. So that you, the idea that you leave the world a little bit better place than what you, before you came into existence, and so that this is a concept that I believe gives depth and a richness to individual life. And there's studies where there's the status of a person in society maps into longevity as well, and so that there's something magical that goes on that you really can't identify, as in diet and exercise, because the same persons that can have the same habits, bad habits, say for example, either of lower status or of what I call sort of this, have less of this nobility of purpose and integrity and so forth, where these factors affect them to a much greater extent, that is their health and ultimately their longevity, relative to people that have much sort of deeper perspective on meaning of life and so forth. And so that there's things that go on magically that you really can't point to, but it has to do with education and position in society. That's very important.